Brian Ferentz needs to be fired. He needs to be fired, and he needs to never set foot on a Division I FBS football field again. 6 turnovers, 158 total yards, and once again, the defense scoring more points than the offense. I mean, this game was like a skit. This was like a literally a skit type of game. It was just bad. I didn't think that Iowa's defense would be broken enough for OSU to cover the monstrous 30-point spread that was established. But clearly, Vegas and other people knew something. Or maybe not knew something, but they were confident that this would happen. They were confident that Ohio State, with the home field advantage, with Jim Knowles' complex defense that honestly is a defense with that kind of complexity, is going to tear apart an Iowa offense that only has 1 or 2 successful plays. That being play action bootleg or the halfback stretch. So this Iowa offense just being simple, it kind of has to be simple in order for anything to work. Facing off against a disciplined top 15, top 10 Ohio State defense in Columbus, that's just not going to end well. And Iowa having 6 turnovers means that, well, that explains the 54 points that Iowa's defense gave up. It really wasn't all the defense either. Iowa's defense only gave up 47 points because 1 touchdown for Ohio State was a Tommy Eichenberg 15-yard interception returned, a pick 6. And the second half, I mean, listen, 14 points in the third, 14 in the fourth. Ohio State wasn't stepping off the gas. Ohio State wanted to score as many points as possible on this Iowa defense to get a statement win. No doubt about it. You could have, if you were Ryan Day or the offensive staff, turned down the gas, stop the car, put it in park at the end of the third quarter, or after the Marvin Harrison 6-yard pass from CJ Stroud, which makes it a 23-point game. And we all know Iowa cannot even muster scoring 14 offensive points against a competent team. But no, Ohio State continued to practice, continued to let their players play, and I can't blame them. And they scored 54 points. And I don't care that it was across 4 quarters, though if it was 54-10 at the half, that would have been darn impressive. Just scoring 54 points against a defense like Iowa's is amazing. And the fact that CJ Stroud got a 79-yard TD pass, against a secondary that's one of the best in the country, that's fascinating. That's amazing. I mean, CJ Stroud, listen, going up against one of the best secondaries in the country, and he went 20 of 30 for 286 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Struggled early on in the game, but eventually, as Iowa's defense was broken, and as Ohio State having that much more raw talent, being much more balanced, that resulted in this. And I don't know what to tell you if you're an Iowa fan. I mean, your team just stinks. The score of this game should have been like 70-10 or 70. I don't even know at this point. It should have been something, though, because turning it over that many times and then holding Ohio State to 4 field goals, 4 field goals and 1 offensive touchdown. There was another defensive touchdown in the first half is impressive as it is, given the nature of Ohio State's offense. There were so many turnovers and so much bad field position by Iowa, which is uncharacteristic of them. But this team, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, is uncharacteristic for even a Kirk Ferentz team. That's how bad this offense is, honestly. Iowa not even getting in opponent territory until the second quarter, which resulted in a Drew Stevens 49-yard field goal. Again, the defense outscoring the offense. Brian Ferentz, I do not know why he's still employed, but Iowa's 3-4. They're 1-3 in conference. Going to pull up their schedule real quick, but it's very likely they're not going bowling Their one conference win is against Rutgers. They'll probably beat Northwestern, and they'll probably lose at Purdue, facing Wisconsin, playing at Minnesota, and hosting Nebraska. I'd say that's 50-50 because Nebraska actually has, they have an offense, and Iowa has a defense, and then they completely lack the other part of it. Nebraska does not have a defense whatsoever. Iowa doesn't have an offense whatsoever. So that Black Friday game, the Heroes Trophy, that's going to be entertaining because just how bad Nebraska's defense is and how bad Iowa's offense is, because the matchups perfectly fit each other like a puzzle, that might actually look like a normal football game. But that's just a little bit about Iowa. The main story is obviously Ohio State, because 54-10, number 2 team in the country, Georgia was idle. And the way Georgia's played, Georgia, they beat Oregon, who's looking very good, 49-3. Ohio State has had more consistent blowouts against the better teams, though, compared to Georgia. Ohio State's my number 1 team. This win just only solidified it. Solidified the fact that I think Ohio State's pulled away from the rest of the nation. And at the end of the day, this game is just proof that offense reigns supreme. Defense, you need defense to win championships, but the key really is defense doesn't win you championships. Georgia, last year's national title, the only reason that they won, or we don't know for sure because we haven't seen this alternate reality play out and we never will, but I guarantee you if Jamison Williams is healthy, Alabama wins that game despite being inferior at every position except for wide receiver and quarterback. They would have won that game because that's how important wide receiver and quarterback and overall offense is. That's how important it is. 2020 Alabama, a team known for its offense, not its defense. Same with 2019 LSU. 2018 Clemson, more so known for its defense, but they had offense and they played a great brand of offense, better brand of offense than 2021 Georgia did, and they had a generational talent at quarterback. 2017 Bama, generational talent at quarterback. They had a solid defense, much like 2018 Clemson, but also a great offense. Offense is how you win championships. Defense helps you get there. You need both. You need somewhat of both to get you to a championship. You need either, a lead on one side of the football, but at least good on the other side of the football. It's really balance. Balance is what wins you championships, not being heavy on one side or heavy on the other. Because this Iowa team, 2018 Michigan State, for example, those are examples of teams that have elite defenses. And if they just had average or above average offenses, they'd be conference contenders. Heck, they'd maybe even be playoff contenders at the initial release of the CFP rankings at the first week of November. But they have some of the worst offenses in the country in their respective years, and it killed them. It absolutely killed them. They couldn't beat anyone with a pulse. It was absolutely impossible. And if they did, it was an exception. Like in 2018, Michigan State beat a Penn State team that finished in the top 20. Iowa this year, I don't know who they're going to beat, if anyone who has a pulse, but they might be able to. And it would be more of a fluke than anything else. Ohio State can only be challenged by a good, balanced team, which, looking at their schedule, Penn State, with home field advantage, might be that, but it's more likely than not that it's going to be Michigan. It's going to be the game, is the first game of the year that Ohio State will be shaken to their absolute core and be challenged and tested. And it's vice versa for the Michigan Wolverines. These are the teams that I think are the 2 best teams in the nation, and by far and away the 2 best teams in their conference. And both of them, to talk about Iowa, both of them dominated Iowa. It was in a different style of football. Michigan's dominance was more mistake-free when it came to turnovers, much more mistake-free. Michigan, in a certain sense, played Iowa's own kind of game and wrecked them. Michigan went into Kinnick Stadium, played the game that Iowa typically loves to play. They beat Iowa at their own game. Ohio State did what they usually do, And it actually went in favor of Iowa for the first half, except Iowa's offense is just so bad and Ohio State's offense is just so good that you wouldn't know it by the scoreboard. And then eventually Ohio State just completely took over. And that's how you got the 54-10, is because Iowa's defense just wearing it down just a little. That's all you had to do for Ohio State's wide open offense to open up. Because Ohio State, at the end of the day, they averaged 2.2 yards per carry. Michigan ran much better against this Iowa defense, and that's because I think Michigan has the better running back room and the better offensive line. They're better and better by a decent margin in both of those categories compared to Ohio State, in my opinion. But Ohio State is better by a significant margin in the wide receiver and quarterback category, which is why they averaged 9.2 yards per pass, had 4 passing touchdowns and only 1 pick, and they averaged 13.4 yards per reception, with a long of 79 by none other than Julian Fleming. Ohio State had a big, explosive play that stretched more than 3/4 of the field against an Iowa secondary that's one of the best in the country. That just shows how good Ohio State's passing game is. And Iowa has a national champion caliber defense. I mean, Jack Campbell, Riley Moss, they're absolutely fantastic. And that's not even naming the rest. That's not even naming the rest of the defense. I mean, Cooper DeJean is one of their better corners as well. You have Seth Benson. You have Lucas Van Ness. You have Joe Evans. Joe Evans is the guy who got the scoop and score. He sacked CJ Stroud. He literally just pushed CJ Stroud over. Ball pops out. Evans recovers himself and dives into the end zone for a scoop and score. What else can I say? And Iowa even has talent on the offense. I mean, they have Sam Laporta at tight end, who's an NFL caliber tight end. They have Luke Leachy as well, or I think that's his name, yeah. And he's a good tight end too. So Iowa has talent, and they're able to still develop talent. Also, Tory Taylor, I think it's Troy Taylor. He's a really good punter. So Iowa on special teams, tight end, and overall defense, they have talent, but at quarterback, at offensive line, their offensive line this year isn't good, and at running back, wide receiver, they got nothing. And that's going to kill a national champion defense at the end of the day when they face a great elite team like Ohio State, who will eventually wear them down and break them. And that's exactly what happened here. Both teams had equal TOP. Ohio State with 30 minutes of TOP in 46 seconds. Iowa with just 29 minutes and 14 seconds. But Iowa turned it over 6 times to Ohio State's 2. Ohio State had 360 total yards to Iowa's 158. Ohio State had 16 first downs to Iowa's 8. And looking at penalties here, I mean, Ohio State only had 5 penalties for 45 yards. Iowa had 3 penalties for 11. It's really the only area that Iowa beat Ohio State in was penalties. Iowa's 1 of 3 on 3rd down, 1 of 4 on 4th down. Now, they held Ohio State to 3 out of 13 for 3rd down, but this is where Ohio State doing their business and breaking Iowa's defense comes into play. Ohio State was 3 of 3 when they went for it on 4th down. So some ramifications here before we close out this episode. Ohio State's offense can only be limited. They're too elite to be stopped. It's like last year's game against Michigan. Michigan didn't stop Ohio State's offense. What Michigan did was they limited them. They let them get into the red zone, essentially, or they let them get at least close to the 50-yard line, and then they stopped them, whether mostly by pressuring them or taking advantage of questionable play calls or forcing Ohio State to be one-dimensional, which is what Iowa sort of did today. I mean, Ohio State had one good drive with the run, and then every time they tried to run after that, Iowa just stopped them, forced them to pass the ball, forced Ohio State to make some misreads or mistakes, some miscues, and they forced Ohio State into kicking 4 field goals. Michigan last year, they forced Ohio State to kick 2 field goals, and they only scored 3 touchdowns. Michigan, on the other hand, scored 6 touchdowns and that's why they won 42-27. So you have to limit this offense. You cannot stop it. If you have to win by stopping Ohio State's offense, you are not going to win. That's an axiom of life. That's an axiom of college football under Ryan Day. The Buckeyes are still far superior at passing the ball than they are at running it. Honest to goodness, this offensive line and running back room have taken steps further. This Ohio State team is still a passing team, though. And I think this is especially proven by the fact that Iowa does have a better passing defense than they do a running defense. And you don't even have to just compare this to the Michigan versus Iowa game. You can compare it to the Illinois versus Iowa football game. Chase Brown averaged 4 yards a carry. Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards combined, I think, averaged like 4 or 5 yards per carry against Iowa. Ohio State averaged 2.2. I think that this Buckeye team, they can run it much better than they did last year. Much better. At the same time, though, they're still pass-oriented. That's where their strength lies. They have a better tendency and a better ability to be balanced, which will help them when I think they play in the playoffs and win the national title, and when I think they go 15-0, because I think that they're going to be the team to do that. At the same time, though, their passing game's their strength. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba only had 1 reception for 7 yards. And the fact that Ohio State, their passing game is this good with their leading wide receiver out, sort of like Tennessee with Cedric Tillman being out. I mean, pass, and run, because you want to keep that balance and you want to, keep your opponent guessing. At the same time, though, what Ohio State's doing through the air, and Ryan Day, Brian Hartline, and Kevin Wilson know this. It's why Stroud passed 30 times and had nearly 300 yards. It's just keep on passing the football. Keep doing what you're doing, Ohio State, because that's going to win you a national title, or it's going to give you a great team, a season that will very likely, 90% sure, will be considered a completely successful season, or close to that. This defense has the ability to make plays and force mistakes as well. When you get 6 turnovers from the opponent, that's just a summary of that. Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers are playing at an All-American level, much better than how they were playing last year, and you can credit that to Jim Knowles, who's the linebacker coach. And you can credit the entire success of the defense to Jim Knowles, who's the defensive coordinator. Period. Amen. This defense is slowly convincing me that they are a top 10 unit. And scoring 54 points on a top 5 defense gives Ohio State a huge resume boost. Again, if they scored 54 on Iowa, I don't care that it took all 4 quarters, what are they going to do to any other team in the nation? Because not too many teams have a better defense than Iowa's does. Not too many teams do. I mean, Iowa stopped Ohio State from running the football to a certain degree. Now, there were drives and moments where Ohio State ran and got what they needed to get, which really helped. And part of the 2.2 yards per carry is factoring in when Ohio State would try and be explosive and test the perimeter with the run, and Iowa would tackle them for a 5-yard loss. So stats don't tell the whole story. At the same time, though, Iowa's defense forced Ohio State to play the game they wanted to play, which is pass it. Attack using the pass. And Ohio State still bullied them there. They still bullied Cooper DeJean and Riley Moss, which if you can bully them, all power to you. You have an amazing quarterback, amazing wide receivers, great tight end, and you have a good offensive line and good running back room too to help you block, or running back occasionally get a reception. Iowa's defense played out of their minds, but they were eventually broken, and I've already talked about this. They didn't allow more than 400 yards, or they didn't allow 500, 600 yards, or anything crazy like that, but their offense just did nothing to help them. Nothing. With a capital N. Actually, all caps for that word. When you have 6 turnovers, you are putting your defense in a position to fail. And indeed, Iowa's defense failed. And in saying that, this is not the typical Iowa team we've been spoiled with for the past 5 years. There's no CJ Beathard. There's no Nate Stanley. Spencer Petras from even last year is gone. He's horribly regressed ever since 2020. He had some hope in 2020. His play at the end of the year was improving. Had a 119 passer rating, 9 touchdowns, 5 picks. Iowa finished close to top 15 that season after starting 0-2. In 2021, he had a 117 passer rating, 10 touchdowns, 9 picks, threw for nearly 2,000 yards, and he had 24 sacks. This season, there are 5 games left on the regular season schedule. Spencer Petras doesn't even have 1,000 passing yards. He has averaged 5.8 yards per pass, 2 passing touchdowns. After today's game against OSU, he's going to have 5 interceptions, and he's probably not even going to have a 100 passer rating. And his QBR is going to tank, because his QBR today was a 3.5. So it's going to go down from its already low 23.1, which is 125th in the nation. This Iowa team has absolutely no quarterback. They have no big playmaker at wide receiver or running back, which is unusual. Given Tyler Goodson, Ekram Wadley, Amir Smith-Marset, going back to Nate Stanley. They don't have a Tyler Linderbaum on the offensive line. I mean, it is uncharacteristic for Iowa's offense to be even this bad. It's very uncharacteristic. So Iowa, it's going to be hard for them for the rest of the year. I don't think they will make a bowl game. For Ohio State, this is a playoff team. At minimum, you're national champions at maximum. And that right there is where I'm going to end this video. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, comment your thoughts on these 2 teams down below. And if you're listening on Spotify, make sure to follow the channel. Thank you guys for watching. Have a nice day and enjoy the night games of college football. Goodbye.